Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I'm going through a really tough time right now, and it's all because of my wife's actions. To be honest, I'm feeling extremely hurt and betrayed by what she did. Let me explain the situation in more detail. A few days ago, I found out that my wife had remorselessly cheated on me and is now pregnant with her affair partner's baby. That alone is a heavy burden to bear, but what happened next added even more strain to our already fragile relationship. My kids, who are innocent bystanders in all of this, found a little bunny and brought it home. They were so excited and begged us to keep it. But the responsible thing to do was to return it to its natural habitat because we already have several pets, and it wouldn't be right to keep a wild rabbit. So, I told my wife to take the bunny to a specific, safe spot at the end of our property and release it there. I emphasized the importance of doing it that way due to the abundance of predators in our country area. However, she decided to disregard my advice completely. While I was busy with work, she took the bunny and let it go right in the middle of our yard. Can you believe it? She completely ignored my instructions and put the poor bunny in harm's way. Predictably, a hawk swooped down and took it away, causing unimaginable distress to my children. When my kids came back into the house, crying loudly and describing the bunny's screams, I was utterly mortified. I was furious with my wife for not listening to me and for putting our kids through such a traumatic experience. She, on the other hand, defended her actions, callously dismissing it as just a bunny and claiming that the kids would get over it. But this was not just about a bunny. It was about her complete disregard for my instructions, her inability to prioritize our children's emotional well-being, and her stubborn refusal to admit she made a grave mistake. Our kids were so traumatized that they shut themselves in their rooms and stopped talking to their own mother for days. When she tried to talk to them, they called her the bunny killer. I've tried my best to mediate and ease the tension between my wife and our kids, but they are still deeply hurt and angry. And honestly, I can't blame them. I'm still furious at my wife for how she handled the situation. She's also upset with me for not backing her up, claiming that husbands and wives should always support each other. But the truth is, this isn't just about one incident. It's about a pattern of behavior where she hasn't had my back when it mattered in the past. We got into a heated argument where I pointed out numerous times when she failed to support me. She started crying and retreated to our room to sulk, leaving me to think about how she has consistently let me down. Our children were just 4 and 5 years old at the time, and I'll never forget that day when they freaked out on their mother. It was a chaotic scene. They came running back to me in tears, calling her the bunny killer. That nickname stuck, and even other people started using it after her affair came to light. But in hindsight, what happened to that poor bunny seems like ancient history compared to what I have to reveal now. I'm speaking as a free man today, having recently finished the divorce process a couple of months ago. Brace yourself. This is a long and complicated story. I apologize for not making this clear sooner, but the P in my story stands for my former affair partner. My wife gave me the silent treatment for a week. I tried to intervene and make our kids stop mistreating their mother, even implementing small punishments like grounding and timeouts. But the bunny killer nickname resurfaced every time our kids got angry with her. Eventually, my wife ended her cold shoulder routine and admitted that she should have listened to me about the bunny incident. She said she felt the need to defend herself because she didn't want to be wrong. I accepted her apology and suggested we go to marriage counseling, but she refused. She acted as though everything was fine in our marriage, and I decided not to push the issue further, thinking things were improving. But a few weeks later, my eldest daughter came to me, visibly upset. She said there was another reason why she was mad at her mother, something she had been keeping from me out of fear. I comforted her and assured her she could tell me anything. What she revealed shocked me to the core. She said that for months, Mama had been bringing a man over while we were separated. This revelation changed everything in an instant, and it left me with a sense of disbelief and betrayal. My wife had introduced our kids to this man as her special friend. She managed to keep our kids quiet about it through various means of bribery, but my eldest sensed that something was very wrong. Kids have a way of picking up on things quickly, and I've always believed in taking them seriously. It bothers me when people dismiss the things kids notice. I had also noticed that my wife had been acting differently lately. She had become shorter-tempered, especially with everyone, including the kids. I tried talking to her about it when I showed her my initial Reddit post, but it escalated into a heated argument. She went off on me, attacking everything from my appearance to my character and habits. She even brought up that I used to smoke, which I quit over 10 years ago. Then she locked me out of our bedroom and cried so loudly that you could hear it throughout the house. So, when my eldest daughter came to me with her revelation, I couldn't help but put two and two together. It became evident that she was cheating, and her behavior had similarities to the mood swings she experienced during her pregnancies. Well, similar might be an understatement because it was even worse this time, as I later discovered through online research and discussions with friends and a counselor. My wife's mood swings were likely a combination of hormonal changes and her guilt over infidelity. I'm no psychology expert, but it seemed to make sense. I desperately wanted it to be a misunderstanding, but I decided to set up a few hidden cameras just in case. I had them discreetly delivered to my workplace to avoid anyone at home discovering them. Then, on a day when my wife had planned a girls' night out with her friends, I set them up around the house. They were easy to install and connect to the Wi-Fi. Within hours, I could monitor every part of the house from my home PC, laptop, and work PC. Initially, I worried that I might have been going overboard, and I hoped I could remove the cameras if it turned out I was wrong. However, my worst fears were confirmed within the first week. The man my wife was having an affair with turned out to be a former colleague of hers. I remembered him well from various functions, where he and my wife seemed close. My wife had quit her job years ago to become a full-time mom after our first child, and it had been a mutual decision at the time. She had stayed in touch with her former coworkers, who were her best friends back then, but that was clearly no longer the case. What I'm about to share has caused my wife to be disliked by nearly everyone who knows about it. First and foremost, her affair partner is significantly younger than she is, by about a decade. She had actually mentored him at her former job to fill her position when she left, and they had remained exceptionally close. Both my wife and I are over 40, but you'd never guess it by looking at her. She's absolutely stunning, often mistaken for someone in their 20s, and it seems she took advantage of that. I eventually confided in my sister about what was happening and showed her the footage from the nanny cameras. She admitted that she had suspected something was off for a while. She even mentioned once seeing my wife at a local bar, getting a bit too close to a man who wasn't me, although they never kissed or did anything overtly inappropriate. There was just a lot of touching on the shoulders and lower back. She didn't tell me sooner because she wasn't entirely sure. To gather more evidence, I ordered a GPS tracker and hid it in the trunk of my wife's car. My sister and her husband agreed to help me and followed the tracker on my wife's next supposed night out with friends. Surprisingly, she went to a completely different place, 20 miles further away than her usual destination. From there, she met up with her affair partner. My sister and brother-in-law observed them from their car for a while and noticed the affair partner repeatedly rubbing her belly during their conversation. They recorded this as well. When I saw the footage, I couldn't deny the obvious conclusion that she must be pregnant with his baby. Given her mood swings at home, it was a devastating realization. My sister and brother-in-law had to calm me down because I was a complete mess. I initially thought about self-medicating with alcohol, but my sister wisely advised against it. I decided to take a leave from work, but told my wife that I was going on a business trip. She was oddly excited about it and didn't seem to mind that I'd be away for a while. This whole situation left me questioning everything about her. It felt as if someone who looked exactly like the woman I'd been married to for nearly 20 years had taken her place overnight. I began to wonder if she was an entirely different person or if I had ever truly known her. To make matters more manageable during this difficult time, I kept the cameras all over the house, and my sister and brother-in-law kindly agreed to take care of my kids for a few days since they love visiting auntie and uncle in the city. My wife seemed to seize the exact opportunity she wanted. She called her affair partner only a few hours after I left for my supposed business trip, and he showed up at our house that evening to spend the night. I won't delve into explicit details about what they did around the house. You can probably fill in those blanks yourselves. But on top of everything, they openly mocked and joked about me continuously. They openly discussed their impending baby and the urgency to figure out what to do before her belly started showing. By then, she was already over 3 months pregnant, and there was no way to pass the child off as mine, especially since her affair partner was of a different race. My wife brushed aside her affair partner's concerns and nonchalantly admitted that this wasn't even her first affair. She confessed to sleeping with another man when she was 29. She told her affair partner that she was tired of acting like a good housewife and being with a boring man like myself. She even went as far as saying that if it weren't for my financial stability, she would have left me long ago. When her affair partner inquired about her plans regarding our kids, her exact words were, "He can have them." She no longer wanted to be around our children because she believed they favored me, and she was eagerly awaiting her do-over baby. I was utterly disgusted as I watched this unfold on my laptop. I was staying in a motel room, and I very nearly threw the laptop on the floor out of sheer anger. But I managed to contain myself, had a few beers from a six-pack, grabbed dinner at a nearby diner, and watched a movie. Then I spent half the night lying in bed, deep in thought, until I finally fell asleep. I thought I knew my wife so well, and I loved her deeply. I would have given her everything I had to give. However, this revelation had shattered my perception of her. It made me realize that some people are just plain evil, and you can never truly know who they are until they reveal their true selves. That night, I made up my mind to go for the jugular in the divorce proceedings. Normally, I'm a kind and calm man, but when pushed to the brink, I can become someone's worst nightmare. The very next day, I visited a law firm specializing in divorce cases and asked for the meanest lawyer they had. I live in an at-fault state, so my wife was in deep trouble the moment I had her affair on camera. Initially, the lawyer was apprehensive about how quickly I wanted to hire him. However, when I explained my situation in more detail and even showed him some of the video footage, his expression changed. He got a devilish grin and said he'd start working on it right away because this was the kind of case divorce lawyers love to sink their teeth into. I had my wife served with divorce papers a few weeks later, choosing a day when I was working from home, and the kids were at school. The local sheriff delivered the papers right into her hands, and our cameras captured the entire scene. She looked visibly frightened as she opened the envelope, read the contents, and then seemingly lost her composure. Immediately after, she stormed into my home office, furious and screaming at me. However, I remained cool and collected throughout the confrontation. By that point, I had mentally checked out of our marriage entirely. My wife wanted to argue, but I simply told her that I had made up my mind, and I wanted her out of my house. I pointed out that I was the only one who had ever paid into the mortgage. She screamed back, insisting that I couldn't do this to her, even threatening to falsely claim that I had physically abused her in an attempt to get me fired from my job. I responded calmly, telling her to go ahead and make up any lie she wanted, but it wouldn't help her case. I reminded her that she had planned on screwing me over since she was pregnant with her affair partner's baby anyway. Her eyes went wide, and she asked me how much I knew. My response was simple yet cryptic. I know enough. I repeated my demand that she leave the house, but she adamantly refused, asserting that it was as much her home as it was mine. She then locked herself in the bedroom. I watched through the bedroom cameras as she had a meltdown, followed by her pulling out her phone and calling the police. She was acting as if she were in a complete panic, but there was an unmistakable smile on her face while she made the call. She was quite the actress, and I would have believed that performance if I hadn't already known her to be a liar. I decided to wait for the police with the front door wide open and welcomed them in when they arrived. They initially seemed prepared for a heated showdown, but they found the house in order with no signs of any physical altercation. My wife rushed out of the bedroom and grabbed the vest of one of the officers while crying and accusing me of being a maniac. I calmly requested that one of the other officers allow me to show them the evidence of what was truly going on. Surprisingly, he agreed, which appeared to startle my wife, as she was unaware that I had recorded her actions. I showed the officer the footage from the cameras on a laptop, including the video of my wife saying she'd make things up to ruin my life. Then, I displayed the footage from the living room after she ran out of my office and into the master bedroom down the hall. Finally, I showed the footage from the camera in the bedroom of her calling the police and lying about me. It was all recorded from multiple angles. Even though my wife claimed to the police that I had hit her, there were no marks on her, and the cameras throughout the house told a completely different story. I handed the police a thumb drive containing all the video footage they needed to see that my wife had called them under false pretenses. My wife, even in the face of all this evidence, stuck to her false accusation of abuse and even tried to claim that the recordings were illegal and inadmissible. I pointed out that the recordings were legal because they were made by security cameras inside my own home, not in a public place. My wife looked to the police and urged them to do something, so they did. They handcuffed her, and she began crying uncontrollably. It was a surreal and disheartening moment for me. This was the woman I had loved for so many years, the person I thought was wonderful, intelligent, and endearing. I couldn't have been more wrong. As the police took her away, she screamed that they couldn't do this to her but didn't put up much of a fight, perhaps to avoid an additional charge of resisting arrest. I then took immediate action to shut down all her credit cards that were in my name and stopped any future payments into our joint bank account, leaving her to rely entirely on her own money to bail herself out of jail. She had saved plenty during all those years. She was still working while the mortgage was in my name, so she was far from broke. When she came back for her car, which was in my name, I had packed a few of her suitcases with clothes and some of her belongings and left the key on the seat. This made it clear she couldn't enter the house again. My wife's parents came to speak to me a day after she bailed herself out of jail. At first, they only had her distorted version of events, which was essentially the same story she had tried to tell the police. Her father, particularly, seemed ready to confront me. However, when I asked him if he knew anything about her affair or her pregnancy, he looked quite surprised and gave me the chance to explain. I pulled out the laptop once again to show my in-laws what I had recorded. When they found out the truth, they were disgusted and said they couldn't believe that this person was their daughter. They apologized to me and said they would keep in touch to help out with my kids. They decided to call my wife on speaker, right in front of me, and confront her about her lies. When my wife tried to double down on her lies in front of her parents, they told her that they were with me and had seen the recordings, knowing everything that had transpired. They made it clear they wanted her out of their house immediately. She attempted to backpedal, but my in-laws were firm in their stance. They told her that they had not raised her to be a selfish, adulterous individual who would try to frame her own husband. They disowned her over the phone right then and there, hanging up before my wife could say anything else. She tried calling them back, but they ignored every attempt. When they returned home, they found not only that she was gone, but that she had also destroyed several things around their house, which left my mother-in-law in tears. Despite everything, I still consider my ex's parents to be my in-laws because they continued to drop by from time to time to see their grandchildren. However, my ex-wife effectively became dead to us all. Later, my wife returned with her affair partner to pack her remaining belongings. The affair partner wouldn't even enter the house, and my wife refused to speak a word to me while gathering her things. She was well aware of the security cameras scattered throughout the house, and any further misconduct on her part would only have further condemned her. I wasn't alone during this ordeal. My sister and brother-in-law were present to help keep an eye on her. My brother-in-law made sure to watch her affair partner from a distance. My wife continued to pack even when the kids arrived home, and she made no effort to speak to either of them, not even when our youngest cried for her. Before leaving, she grabbed a few photos of us from our wedding that were hanging on the wall and threw them on the floor, breaking them. I believe she expected a reaction from me, judging by the way she looked at me during the act. However, I chose not to respond, and she gathered her last bags and walked out the door. Once she was gone, I had to call my elderly mother to come stay with me for a while because I couldn't take care of my kids alone. I couldn't take much time off work, and daycare options were limited. Additionally, I ordered DNA tests for my kids, just to be sure, even though I was confident they were mine. Several people had suggested it, and I thought it was a wise precaution. I had to know for certain, so I arranged for DNA tests, and thankfully, both of my children were confirmed to be mine. I also got tested for STIs, and I was clean, so there were no worries in that regard. About a week later, my wife showed up at my door, suggesting that she would agree to a clean divorce if I did as well, meaning she would have received half of everything if I had agreed. However, I firmly declined her proposal. There was some back and forth arguing, during which she more or less admitted that she had found out that the law in our state was not on her side. We had met, gotten engaged, got married, and lived our entire lives in this state. So there was no way she could avoid taking a significant loss unless I agreed to a settlement, which I did not. I told her that she had betrayed me, our kids, her parents, and practically everyone by having an affair. Then, I slammed the door in her face, and she left quietly. I didn't see her again until we met in divorce court a few months later. By that time, she was visibly quite pregnant, and she had obtained a lawyer. Her affair partner was nowhere to be seen. I had expected her to lie to the judge, which she attempted to do a few times. However, I had enough video evidence to refute any lies, so she didn't stand a chance in that regard. Instead, she tried to drag out the divorce by refusing to cooperate and making various demands. She wanted most of my savings, among other things, and insisted that I buy out her half of the house, even though she had never contributed to it. On my end, I was pushing for full custody of the kids and to remove her name from the house deed. I had the video evidence to back up her statements about not really caring for our children anymore and her willingness to make up lies. My wife attempted to stall and repeatedly changed her demands, but the judge didn't allow her to keep dragging things out. Given that we were in an at-fault state and she was the adulterer, her attempts to frame me only made her case worse. In the end, she lost all custody of our kids and walked away with nothing more than her personal belongings. Considering the circumstances of my divorce, I believe the financial settlement was fair, given the laws and evidence involved. Here are some key points. Property division. The house, which was entirely in my name, remained mine in the divorce settlement. However, the car I had bought for my ex-wife, even though the title was in my name, was considered marital property because it was acquired during our marriage. As part of the settlement, I transferred the title to her and she received the car. Alimony and support. my ex-wife received a relatively small financial payout, which amounted to $60,000. This amount was determined based on various factors, including the duration of our marriage and her financial needs. Child custody. I was granted full custody of our children, as my ex-wife's behavior and statements, especially the video evidence of her admitting not caring about the children, played a significant role in the judge's decision. She willingly relinquished all rights to our kids and did not pursue any custody arrangement. It's worth noting that the legal process can vary depending on the jurisdiction, and the outcome of divorce cases depends on many factors, including the specific details of each case. In my situation, the evidence I had, combined with the laws in our at-fault state, played a crucial role in the settlement. For those wondering about the police involvement, I can attest that the police in my area take false accusations seriously. My ex-wife's attempt to frame me as a wife-beater led to her arrest, as making false accusations can have serious consequences. In the end, while the divorce was a challenging and painful process, I am now free from the turmoil and deceit of my past marriage and focused on moving forward with my life. As time passed, I focused on rebuilding my life and providing a stable and loving environment for my children. Having full custody allowed me to bond with them more deeply, and we made many cherished memories together. With the support of my extended family and newfound friendships, we created a close-knit and supportive network. I also decided to invest some of my time in personal growth. I explored new hobbies, rediscovered old passions, and even took some classes to enhance my skills. This journey of self-discovery not only boosted my confidence, but also led me to meet someone truly remarkable. In a surprising turn of events, I crossed paths with someone who shared my interests, values, and a deep respect for family. We fell in love, and together, we blended our lives and created a warm and loving home for my children. My new partner embraced my kids as their own, and we became a loving and united family. Over time, my ex-wife's actions and deceit began to feel like a distant memory, and forgiveness became an essential part of my healing process. I wished her well in her new life, and hoped that she would find happiness and fulfillment. As the years went by, my children thrived in their new family structure, surrounded by love and support. We celebrated milestones, faced challenges together, and learned valuable life lessons. Despite the initial turmoil, our journey led us to a place of happiness, love, and contentment, proving that even after the darkest storms, there can be a bright and promising rainbow on the other side. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
I'm torn about whether I can bring myself to cause the pain I know I'm about to inflict on an innocent party who doesn't deserve what's about to happen in the next half hour or so. However, as I gaze at the large, meticulously framed photograph of me and Dave on our wedding day hanging above the mantel, my tearless eyes reflect the emotional toll of my mostly happy 28-year marriage. Those tears were shed during the internal debate on whether to proceed with this conversation. The verdict is yes, but I'm still resisting the urge to flee. Dave is going to be devastated. Seated beside me on the sofa, John gives my hand a reassuring squeeze, boosting my courage. I glance sideways at him and smile in gratitude. Over the 15 months of our affair, I've gradually fallen in love with him, and I'm aware that every bit of love I've given him has been taken directly from Dave. The moment it felt like cheating on John to make love to my husband marked the beginning of preparations for this meeting. I'm not looking forward to it, but I anticipate relief afterward. I'm going to hurt Dave profoundly, unavoidable as it may be. Yet once it's over, I can end the charade, pretending that I'm as deeply in love with Dave as he clearly is with me, pretending to go out with my girlfriends, on work trips, clothes shopping, all the while meeting up with John. It's incredibly stressful, and a significant factor in the worry lines increasingly visible on my face each morning. Yes, I look forward to the release. I glance at the bookcase, ensuring the baseball bat I discreetly placed there earlier is still in position. Dave's stance on fidelity is well known to me. Since the kids left home, he's been reading short stories about cheating wives facing consequences. Some of these stories surprised me with the husband's fierce reactions, making the wives pay dearly for their transgressions. When I questioned him, he simply mentioned colleagues who experienced upheavals in the no-fault family court system after sharing similar stories. Update. Dave, by nature, isn't a violent man, but when confronted by the person stealing his happiness and future, he might make an exception. He surpasses John in size, fitness, and strength, and is less sensitive. Holding a prominent position in a biomedical company, Dave contrasts sharply with John, an artist. Despite any provocation, I know Dave won't physically damage me, allowing me to keep him at bay so John can escape. I hear Dave's car in the driveway, and my stomach churns, heart pounding. I swallow, needing to steel myself. Deep breath. I wonder about his thoughts on the unfamiliar car, John's car. I sense that Dave must have read a similar scenario in a cheating story, the first one I ever read. My heart rate increases. I must stay calm. Dave walks in, eyeing John with curiosity. I stay seated, avoiding kissing Dave in front of John. Dave notices my omission and approaches with an outstretched hand. He introduces himself as Dave, and John hesitates before a brief handshake. Dave discreetly rubs his hand on his pants, a gesture I recognize after so many years. John retreats to the couch. Dave grabs a beer, sits opposite us, takes a pull, placing the can on the coffee table alongside our glasses. The tension makes my nerves feel on the verge of snapping, like a branch pushed beyond its limit. I can't meet Dave's questioning gaze. Instead, my eyes flit lower to his casual attire. When did he start coming home dressed so casually? I shake off inane questions about clothing. Now is the moment I've been dreading, where I shattered the soul of an outstanding community member, terrific father, provider, and nearly perfect husband. The first love of my life, but not the last. I admit that we need to talk to Dave. He responds with a neutral, unreadable expression, as expected in pressure situations. He remains coldly analytical, thinking on his feet better than I do. Despite preparing for every angle, my nerves betray me. I say to Dave that I want him to know he's done absolutely nothing wrong. My voice is shaky as I clear my throat, still unable to meet his eyes. Throughout all the years we've been together, my friends have been envious of our marriage. It should be acknowledged that Dave has been an exceptional husband. I laugh, but Dave doesn't reciprocate with a smile. Attempting to cushion the forthcoming blow, I admit my apprehension about discussing this with some friends, fearing they may not forgive me for causing Dave pain. Even as I focus my gaze over his shoulder, I notice no hint of a smile or softening in Dave's features. His lips move, but he resembles a statue. He questions if I'm going to hurt him, and the words are simple yet compelling, drawing my gaze to his. I finally meet his eyes, but his stare is firm and unyielding, as if studying something on a microscope slide, and it breaks the spell, making me look away, unnerved. I express my regret to Dave, explaining that I have fallen out of love with him and fallen in love with John. I want to hurt him as little as possible, but I need a divorce so John and I can be together. Pausing at this juncture now that the words are spoken, I try to discern any turmoil behind his mask, expecting to see something. A throbbing at his temple, wet eyes, tightly drawn lips, his fist clenching. Yet there's nothing. His reaction, or rather his lack of it, terrifies me. I can't help but glance at the baseball bat. The silence between us is agonizing, unbearable. I have to fill it. My carefully prepared speech is a thing of the past. I explain that I didn't want to hurt him until I absolutely had to. I hope he sees that. John and I have been incredibly careful, not wanting him to find out until it was absolutely necessary, which is now. That meant limiting our time together. My concern for you, for your feelings, significantly restricted the occasions John and I could be together. Be together? Avoiding, you mean? I can't respond. I can't meet his gaze. I have no more lies left in me. I've exhausted them all. I can't lie to this man. Not anymore. I respect him too much, but I had hoped he wouldn't ask, wouldn't be so direct. His words make it all seem sordid. My lack of response is all the confirmation Dave needs. There doesn't seem to be anything left to say, or any point in apologizing again. I'm willing to hurt Dave. I know it. He knows it. Update. The room's atmosphere is dreadful, and I yearn to escape. The tension is nearly unbearable, and my nerves are so tightly strung that my skin prickles uncomfortably. While Dave isn't outwardly screaming in pain, I know him well enough to sense the internal turmoil. Anxiously, I wonder which of my anticipated responses from him will unfold. Regardless, I know it will be terrible. Something must break through for me to start my life with John. For what feels like an eternity, Dave stares at me until he acknowledges, "Okay, Chelsea." My response is automatic and slips out before I can edit it. I question him, asking what he means by okay. I assume he wants a divorce so he can marry the other person. His tone remains patient, his expression bland and neutral. I sit back, too stunned to speak. This isn't one of the expected reactions, unexpected, out of left field, like a kick. I feel insulted. There are no questions, accusations, raised voice, red face, or tears. After 28 years together, my husband isn't going to spend even 5 minutes questioning me. After months of agonizing over my affair with John and sleepless nights dreading this moment, I've been discarded in under 10 minutes, all without apparent emotion. I realize I need to say something, but I must be careful. I consider how to break through Dave's reserve without losing John. A fine line. I bring up the fact that, after all our years together, he is willing to just walk away. Dave questions why I wouldn't agree to part ways, asserting that I've already emotionally left him. He wonders about the point of fighting and suggests preserving our fond memories by going separate ways. It's an answer, though not the one I was hoping for. Before I can pose another question, Dave continues, anticipating that I have papers for him to sign. Indeed, I have a signed and notarized divorce petition, but it's in John's car. We didn't anticipate progressing beyond the anticipated yelling, screaming, and possible tears tonight, let alone Dave examining or signing any papers. Before I can rise to retrieve the documents, John stands and exits. I observe him, sensing the tension affecting him as well. In the uncomfortable silence following his departure, I express my apologies to Dave, regretful for causing him pain. Dave stands up, and my eyes involuntarily glance at the bat. He dismisses my apologies, asserting that if I were truly sorry, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. He strides into the kitchen for another beer, effectively ending the conversation. Upon his return, John is back with the manila envelope, holding it at waist height. Dave takes 2 quick steps toward him. My heart goes out to John as he steps backward, tripping over his feet, hitting the edge of the couch, and landing with a soft thud. Now holding the envelope, Dave glances at me, red-faced, realizing he isn't covering himself in glory. I try to convey with my eyes that I don't care, that I love him. Turning to Dave, who watches me with an impersonal expression, I still can't read his thoughts, and I'm not entirely sure he won't attack John. I inform Dave that Mary is aware of our presence, and if she doesn't hear from us by 8, I instructed her to call the police. I add that if he wants someone to blame, he should blame me instead of directing any anger towards John. In response, Dave expresses that he does blame me, highlighting that I made numerous promises to him all those years ago, not John. He assures me that he doesn't want John to suffer any more than he's already going to. I question Dave about why John would suffer and what he means by that. Dave gives me a look, a kinder and more patient version, the kind he uses when explaining something I may not fully understand. He elaborates on the idea that, being a woman of 50, I am past the age of giving John children, making him go childless, a genetic backwater. Dave expresses his belief that there is no worse punishment for a man than never experiencing the joy of witnessing a child's first steps or hearing them say dada for the first time. He goes on to describe how John will miss out on the typical experiences of teaching a child to catch a ball, ride a bike, helping with homework, and teaching them to drive. Dave emphasizes that John will never be a hero to his daughter or a role model for his son. He speculates that our kids will likely want nothing to do with John once they discover what the two of us did. His words cause my blood to turn to ice, and I shiver, realizing I haven't considered the impact on the kids amidst the turmoil of my affair and the end of my marriage. I attempt to reassure Dave, telling him he doesn't have to tell them. Dave questions if I want him to lie to the kids as I lied to him. I hang my head, but he continues, emphasizing that John will marry someone he can never fully trust. He describes how John will be with someone capable of hurting him while professing love, someone skilled at hiding abhorrent behavior with acting skills. Dave prompts me to think about how John will feel the first time I inform him that I'm working late, going out with friends, or using the same myriad excuses I used with Dave to spend time with him. Shifting focus to me, Dave speculates about the future, when my looks start to fade in another 5 years, while John remains a trim-looking 40-year-old. He questions whether John will hesitate to leave me, having seen all my perceived flaws. Dave mentions aspects like my crankiness due to PMT, my loud snoring in deep sleep, and other habits that John will soon discover. Offended, I leap to my feet, ready to retaliate, claiming that I'm not the only one who snores and pointing out my ability to color coordinate. I start to list Dave's faults, but a gasp from John stops me. His expression shows that Dave's points are resonating. I realize I need to get John out of here. Dave shrugs while I collapse back onto the couch, shocked and filled with anger and offense. Is this truly what he thinks of me? Has he harbored these thoughts throughout all these years? Update. I have so much I want to say. After months of doing my utmost to keep my affair secret to protect Dave, I now have an overwhelming desire to make him pay for not caring, for discarding me so easily. But the words won't come. They fail me as I watch Dave take a swig of his beer before tearing open the envelope. I look down at my hands, avoiding John's gaze, and can only hope he's not looking at me either. Dave mutters about half the value of the house, looking up at me. He disputes the idea, asserting that it was his before he even met me. Dave suggests I might get away with half the bank account, but there may not be as much in there as I think. He acknowledges the likelihood of splitting the difference in our retirement accounts at the date of our separation, but mentions that I won't receive anything until he retires in 17 years. As he reads the rest of the document, he falls silent. I contemplate whether John's love for me can overcome the fact that we won't have the financial stability we thought we'd have, as I had assured him. Dave's words echo in my mind about the difference between an artist and a pizza, using John as a living example. What's the difference between an artist and a pizza? A pizza can feed a family. The silence drags on, feeling interminable. Finally, Dave looks up and comments that everything seems pretty reasonable, except for the house, anticipating that my lawyer will charge me thousands to fight that. He then shifts the focus to the immediate future, wondering what we do now. He suggests I get a lawyer, and he contemplates packing a few things, but I interject, expressing my desire for him to leave right away. Dave considers alternatives, suggesting he could drop my belongings off at John's place next weekend. He plans to change the locks in 2 days, making it impractical for me to return. He mentions that if I miss anything, I can email him. Dave declares that I can have all the pictures off the walls, excluding the ones of the kids, as we'll divide those. He emphasizes his desire for no reminders of me except for the photo of us on the cruise last year, which I can't have. I wonder what is so special about that picture that it's the only one with me that Dave wants to keep. It was taken about 3 months after I'd started my affair with John, when Dave surprised me with a short-notice cruise in the Caribbean. I didn't love John at that stage and still enjoyed sleeping with my husband, so the photo shows a woman smiling after much love. I have no idea why he wants just that one of us. While I'm musing on that, Dave turns directly to John and addresses him for the first time. He inquires about John's current address, initially mentioning 42 Belmont and then correcting himself, noting that John moved a few months ago to 58 Grevillea. The revelation leaves me shocked. Dave knew about John's new address. Not only that, but he's known for at least 4 months. I grapple with the realization, questioning when and how he found out. We've been so careful, and I can't fathom how I missed any signs. I replay scenes of dinners, closeness moments, gifts, date nights, birthdays, our anniversary, mornings, nights, days, and time with our children. Yet in not one scene could I detect a change in Dave. I look at Dave as if seeing him for the first time. This is the man I have spent my entire adult life with, the man who held my hand and encouraged me while I gave birth to our children, the man who I nursed through influenza, the real one, the one where you can't lift your head off the pillow, who nursed me morning sickness and an emergency, the man I should know as well as the back of my hand, the man I should be in tune with, notice any change in. None. There's been none. I'm sure of it. I stare at him, marveling. A stranger. My husband of 28 years is a stranger to me. I've been thinking myself so clever, so careful, not giving anything away, such a good actress. But Dave is better, so much better. He knew and hid his knowledge from me. How could he? How could he hide it so well? If he truly loves me, he shouldn't have been able to. The thought triggers heat. I don't want to explore the logic of it. Had I truly loved him, would I have been able to hide it so well? But clearly, I didn't hide it so well. Dave knew, had known for months. I look at him, but it's not him from the here and now. It's him from a mere 2 weeks ago. I see him undressing me, gentle, loving, cherishing. A lie. He knew. I think about how hard I'd worked to respond, to hide my guilt, how careful I'd been to ensure my expression was loving and responsive. I contemplate the tears I suppressed, silently apologizing to John while reciprocating, touching, and kissing, pretending I desired to make love. The stress is present, the battle against the urge to flee, to recoil. The shame when my body betrayed my heart and climaxed. I had to resist leaping from the bed immediately after, wanting to wash Dave's scent off me. Following the act, I lay beside him, sleepless while he slept, apologetic to both men. I've lied and betrayed both. I reflect on the days and nights where similar scenes played out, my heart pounding not from love or lust, but from fear of being caught, anxiety over lies, stress over my performance, and the thought of my deception, my betrayal, being exposed. All for nothing. Dave had known. For months I've been scared, editing every word, conscious of every facial expression, nerves stretched to their limit, exhausted from hiding my betrayal and shielding Dave from hurt, keeping track of my lies. Sleepless, a mental wreck. All for nothing. Did he love me at all? Ever? How long has he been pretending? A month? 4? 15? 28 years? All those things he said to John, all those awful things, what he truly thinks of me. I look at him, and I want to cry. He's dry-eyed. It's me fighting tears. Me, nauseous from rage and rejection. I reach for the glass of Chardonnay, wanting to douse the flames and rinse the bitterness from my mouth. It tastes sour. Dave removes the glass of wine from my hand, holding John's half-finished glass in the other. He turns and walks toward the kitchen, emphasizing the shift from ours to his kitchen. Over his shoulder, he casually instructs me to hurry, mentioning that John is already at his car. The dismissal is evident, and I turn my head to find that John has indeed left the room. He didn't wait for me, and we won't be walking out together. Update. 4 years later. Closing the magazine, I realize I can't recall a single article or ad. Probably no loss. The content is likely outdated. Checking the dates on the cover, I confirm the magazine is 3 years old. I think to myself, surely a doctor's practice as large and well patronized as this one can afford current magazines, as I return it to the stack and select another. I continue my next round of board flicking, waiting for my name to be called. When I hear Mrs. Smith, I don't react immediately. It takes a repetition for me to startle, feeling a bit foolish. Even after 4 years, I'm not used to being called Mrs. Smith instead of Mrs. Brown. I rise, heft my bag onto my shoulder, and head down the corridor to my doctor's room. The doctor greets me with, "Hello, Mrs. Smith. What can I do for you today?" I explain that I've come to have my Implanon replaced after 5 years. He acknowledges this, noting it's in my appointment notes, and suggests that I talk to my husband about sharing the responsibility and considering a vasectomy. He smiles, and I return the smile, responding with, "Maybe next time." I keep my face friendly and neutral, but inside I feel smug. My arguments with John about him having a vasectomy have been a battle of wills for months. Why should I continue to chemically poison my body when he can just undergo a simple procedure? It's not even an operation done in a hospital. The good doctor here could perform it, unlike the non-chemical option for me, which would be to have my tubes tied, something I've pointed out to John more than once. During our last argument over the issue, I remembered he'd said he'd had the mumps as a child. I asked him to get his seed fluid tested, thinking I could still have a win in our standoff and go off birth control if the test came up with John having a low seed fluid count. The stubborn guy refused to get tested. But I'm also stubborn, so while still churning over his harsh words, I secretly salvaged some of his seed and sent it off for testing. Oh yes, I stored it correctly. Truly. Turns out John doesn't just have a low seed fluid count. He's sterile. No seed fluid in his seed at all. None. Initially flush with victory, I intended to confront him with the results, but then common sense prevailed. I wanted a happy husband again and not a sparring partner. I wanted lovemaking, not merely the release of attraction. Somewhere I remembered the inconvenience of monthly bleeds. I like not having to deal with menstruation, so a replacement implant it is. After all, it won't be forever. Dr. Jones is saying something, and I totally miss it. I apologize and ask him to repeat. He suggests swapping my Implanon for the new type of contraceptive implant, explaining that it is rather fantastic. Not only does it offer contraception, but it also records my pulse at regular intervals during the day and comes with a variety of other recording tools we use for diagnostic purposes. So if you come in feeling unwell, all you have to do is pause by one of our scanners and it downloads information, and we can see what's been happening with you internally since your last visit. Real space-age stuff. Wow, I laugh. It sounds like something off Star Trek. What about side effects? I'm not going to end up the size of a barn, am I? Or grow whiskers or something? And is it like Implanon in that most women stop bleeding altogether? No, nothing like that. Less disruptive than Implanon, but with all its benefits such as stopping or at least lessening the heaviness of blood flow. Okay, sounds good. Dr. Jones turns to his monitor and clicks on one of the icons on his home screen. Oh, what? He murmurs, rubbing his neck. What the? I look at him and then the screen, wondering at his confused tone. How long did you say you've had your implant in? He asks, turning toward me. 5 years. How is that possible? Are you certain? It appears you already have a Vanguardian implanted. All your medical information has downloaded. Confused, I ask, what? The doctor explains that I must have been in within the last 18 months, since that's how long they've been approved and available. However, I protest, stating that I haven't been to a doctor in 2 years or more. He turns back to the screen, and even in profile, I can see he's gone pale. He mentions that there's information going back 4 years, and questions the presence of WAV files, which are audio files. He speculates that there must be a glitch, suggesting that someone else's Vanguardian might have been accidentally linked to my patient card. However, the timeline doesn't add up, and he's perplexed by the inclusion of a Google map with a flag showing the clinic. To resolve the mix-up, the doctor suggests examining my Implanon. My head is spinning as I move to the examination bench and lay down. I turn my head away as I'm a little squeamish about needles and the like. It's definitely a Vanguardian, he says, and I can hear the confusion in his voice. It's the same as the ones we implant except for being a smidge longer and wider. I swivel my head and look at the doctor comparing my implant with an image on the screen. My eyes are drawn to the top of the page, Vanguardian. Seeing it written jogs a memory. I know that name. That was someone's pseudonym on the amateur writing site where Dave was reading about cheating wives. A coincidence? The rest of my appointment passes in a blur. We'll sort this out, Mrs. Smith. There has to be some sort of crossed signal or something in your old implant. Or maybe you were part of some test group or something. I'll get our tech guys onto Vanguardian and we'll be in touch. I nod and walk back to the reception area. I pay my bill and head to my car. With my hands on the wheel, snatches of conversations from the past spill into my already overloaded head. Update. There's a clause in my contract stating they own all my research and inventions. Even if I work on something at home during my own time, I can't patent it for at least 12 months after resigning. Dave's favorite part of his work was research and innovation. It was his forte. In my mind's eye, I see Dave seated on the couch with me and John. I envision his faded jeans and casual polo shirt. I recall the shock of our meager savings when dividing assets, and his insistence on keeping the framed photo from the Caribbean cruise taken 3 months into my affair with John. Stunned, my hands dropped to my lap. I had the Implanon inserted weeks before that cruise, at Dave's suggestion to avoid inconvenient monthly disruptions during our vacation. I felt touched to have such a considerate husband. Looking back at the clinic, it's a different one from my previous choice. I changed doctors and clinics after separating from Dave because our old doctor, shared with Dave, was a friend of his father, and the one who inspired Dave to enter medical research. Continuing with Dr. Black would have been awkward. Dave knew about John. He must have known from the start. Somehow, he convinced Dr. Black to implant a device he developed, a Vanguardian. Mine had a GPS locator and the ability to record voice files. It seems illegal. I don't recall consenting, but I signed something. Regardless, I should sue Dr. Black. I didn't know what I was signing. He's retired and living in Brazil. Apparently his much younger wife is from there. Can he be extradited from Brazil, where German war criminals fled during World War II due to no extradition treaties? Why develop an implant with GPS and recording abilities? Surely not just to track me. My mind mulls it over, and then it hits me. Military. Yes, military. Something like that would be useful for them. I know Dave was involved in developing something for diabetic soldiers that regulated their sugar without daily injections or medication. So, a GPS locator and recorder aren't much of a leap. My mind swirls with possibilities. Around the time of our cruise, or shortly after, Dave must have quit his job. No wonder our savings were low. He had us living off it. I never checked. I used my credit card and Dave handled bills. Was the cruise photo a memento of his resignation? Dave organized the framing himself. Could it have been the scanner for the implant? Surely not. Deep inside, I know that's exactly what it was. That's why he suggested hanging it in the hall by the coat rack and why he opposed me having it. He knew I might reframe it or give it to the kids who could have discovered its true purpose. The enormity of how I've been deceived leaves me stunned. It all appears so unbelievable, like something from a Jason Bourne or James Bond movie, yet my gut insists it's true, all of it. It feels as though there's a vice tightening around my chest, making it hard to breathe. No wonder he didn't seek revenge in the divorce. He had already done it, at least financially. And I can't do anything about it. Dr. Black is likely beyond reach, and Dave, being Dave, probably secured my signature on a consent form. To make matters worse, it's been almost 4 years since Dave and I finalized our divorce. While I'll receive a portion of his retirement funds, I suspect the millions he earns from Vanguardian are funneled through corporations, and I won't see a penny. I touch my arm where the new implant lies. I can't even confide in John. Things are already shaky at home without me revealing how thoroughly my ex-husband deceived me. Now Dave lives in the Algarve, and the kids rave about his beachfront villa, though we rarely talk. In a daze, I pull into the driveway of the small, run-down cottage I share with John. I can't recall the trip home. I hope I didn't run any red lights. The last thing I need on top of today's revelations is a traffic infringement notice. On autopilot, I unlock the door and enter the lounge. John is on the couch. Chelsea, we have to talk. Only then do I notice he's holding hands with a girl who looks no older than 30, but is undeniably pregnant. She doesn't have much time left. 2 glasses of Chardonnay sit on the table in front of them.
In the tranquil suburb of Oakwood, a spacious house with an impeccably maintained garden stood out from the rest. It was the residence of Catherine Bennett, a 60-year-old lady known in the neighborhood for her sweet kindness and her garden full of vibrant flowers. But the joy of colors in her garden contrasted with the sadness of the silence in her home. John and Lily, her children, had moved away years ago, and the visits that used to be frequent became rare and eventually ceased. Sitting in the old armchair in the living room with a cup of tea in her hand, Catherine stared fixedly at the family portrait on the fireplace. The youthful smiles of John and Lily alongside Catherine's late husband seemed to belong to another life. "John, Lily, where are you, my dear ones?" Catherine whispered, her voice trembling, her eyes clouded with tears. A ringtone interrupted the silence. Catherine answered, hoping it was one of her children. "Mom, it's me, John," the voice on the other end of the phone announced, and the relief in Catherine's voice was palpable. "Oh, John. It's been so long since I heard your voice." "We've missed you, Mom," John replied with a rehearsed tone. "Lily and I have been thinking we need to spend more time with you. We're considering a visit. What do you think?" Catherine felt a flicker of joy. "Oh, that would be wonderful, my dear. I can't wait." As she hung up the phone, Catherine's smile brightened the room. She had no idea that phone call would be the beginning of a series of events that would change her life forever. On a cold, dark autumn night, the headlights of a car illuminated the entrance to Catherine's house. John and Lily, both wearing concerned expressions, stepped out of the vehicle and walked up to the front door. Lily, the younger of the two, with perfectly applied makeup to hide the marks of time, looked at John with a doubtful expression. Do you think she'll believe us? She whispered nervously. John, older and with deep lines of worry on his face, looked at Lily, his gaze stern yet determined. She has to believe us, Lily. We have no other choice. They knocked on the door and were greeted by Catherine's radiant smile. John. Lily, she exclaimed, embracing both warmly. Come in, I've prepared dinner. During dinner, John and Lily filled the old house with laughter and stories of their lives in the big city. They talked about their jobs, friends, and even the difficulties they were facing. But they left out the crucial part of their lives, their desperate financial situation. In the following days, John and Lily's visits became frequent. They helped Catherine with household chores, brought gifts, and made all kinds of gestures that fueled Catherine's hope of having her children back. Mom, John began one evening, Lily and I have been talking. We miss you, and we think you miss us too. How about selling this house and coming to live with us in the city? Catherine, surprised by the suggestion, looked at her children, tears of joy welling up in her eyes. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The possibility of living with her children again was all she wanted. However, she had no idea that her dreams were about to turn into a nightmare. For days, Catherine pondered over John and Lily's proposal. She loved her house, but the idea of living with her children, seeing their faces every day, and sharing their lives filled her with emotion. Finally, one night, she made a decision. John, Lily, I've thought a lot about what you said, Catherine began, her voice trembling. And I've decided to sell the house and come live with you. The siblings exchanged furtive glances, their faces masking the satisfaction they felt. Oh, Mom, we're so happy. Lily exclaimed, getting up to hug Catherine. You'll love the city, I'm sure. With the decision made, things moved quickly. The house was put up for sale and, to Catherine's surprise, it sold in no time. She found herself surrounded by boxes, her belongings being packed for the move. While packing her photo albums, Catherine felt a twinge of sadness bidding farewell to the house that had been her home for so many years. I'm going to miss this place, she said softly, caressing the frame of an old photograph. Don't worry, Mom, John said, putting a comforting arm around her shoulders. You'll love the city. And most importantly, we'll all be together. At that moment, Catherine didn't notice the complicit look exchanged between John and Lily. She was far from imagining the true intention behind their comforting words. The big move finally happened. Catherine, with a mix of excitement and nervousness, said goodbye to her house and the neighborhood she loved so much. John and Lily welcomed her into their car and took her to the big city. Hey, Mom, you'll love the view from our apartment, Lily said, trying to lighten the heavy atmosphere. And the parks, the shops, everything will be new and exciting. Upon arrival at their destination, Catherine was met not with a cozy apartment, but with the entrance of a large nursing home for the elderly, the walls painted in pastel colors, the gardens well-maintained. John, Lily, there must be some mistake, Catherine said, confused. This is a nursing home. Mom, we're so sorry for not being honest from the beginning, John began, his voice trembling, avoiding her gaze. We can't support another person in our apartment anymore. And with the money from selling your house, we were able to secure a safe and comfortable stay for you here. Catherine felt her heart tighten. She looked at Lily, hoping to see some sign that this was just a tasteless joke, but Lily's face was serious, her eyes filled with tears. Mom, we're so sorry, Lily said, tears streaming down her face. We promise we'll visit you whenever we can. And so Catherine found herself alone, abandoned at the entrance of the nursing home. She felt a deep sadness, a sense of betrayal that left her bewildered. With tears streaming down her face, she entered the new place that would be her home, unaware that this sad twist in her life was about to give way to surprising new beginnings. Life in a nursing home was a big change for Catherine. She missed the freedom of her own house, the familiarity of her garden, and above all, the hope of being with her children again. But she was a woman of strong spirit and decided to face the situation head-on. One afternoon, while sitting in the nursing home garden, Catherine saw an old house for sale across the street. Something about that house caught her attention. It seemed lonely, just like her. Remembering her hidden savings, Catherine decided to buy the house. When she shared the news with her children, they laughed, doubting Catherine's ability to take care of an old and unused house. But Catherine was determined. "I am stronger than you think," Catherine said, looking into John and Lily's eyes. "And this will be my home." On moving day, Catherine found herself once again surrounded by boxes, but this time there was a sense of anticipation and hope. Shortly after moving in, Catherine met her neighbors, a young couple with 4-year-old twins. Camilla and Martin were kind and offered help with the necessary repairs in the house. "Ms. Catherine, this house needs a little touch of love," Martin said, looking at the weathered house. "And I think we can help you with that." And so, a new friendship blossomed. Even in the midst of a challenging situation, Catherine found herself surrounded by people who genuinely cared for her. It was a twist she didn't expect, but deeply appreciated. The following months were a whirlwind of activity. Camilla and Martin, along with their adorable twins Julia and Max, helped Catherine transform the old house into a home. They painted walls, repaired the roof, and tidied up the garden. Catherine, despite her age, was determined to assist in every way she could. "Mrs. Catherine, you need to rest," Camilla scolded as Catherine insisted on helping plant flowers in the garden. "My dear, I've never felt so alive," Catherine replied, her face radiating joy. The old house began to come back to life. The walls received new colors, the garden blossomed, and the house, once so lonely, was now filled with laughter and conversation. John and Lily, observing from a distance, couldn't believe the transformation. They never expected Catherine to be capable of such a feat. Their surprise, however, turned into anger and resentment. They felt deceived, believing that Catherine had hidden money from them. "Mom, you really surprised us," John said during a visit, his voice filled with false joy. "Yes, Mom, you really showed us how independent you are," Lily added, her smile not reaching her eyes. But Catherine, happy in her new life and oblivious to her children's feelings, just smiled and thanked them, unaware of the storm brewing. Life in the old house was just beginning, and with it, new surprises were waiting. With the house finally in order, Catherine began exploring every corner, every room, getting to know all the secrets of the place. One afternoon, while descending the creaky stairs to the basement, Catherine noticed something peculiar. The basement was damp and dark, filled with old boxes and dusty furniture. In one corner, there was a large, old, locked chest. Catherine's curiosity was immediately piqued. Camilla, noticing Catherine's excitement, suggested, "Maybe Martin can open the chest for you, Mrs. Catherine." With Martin's help, the chest was opened, revealing a stunning collection of jewels and gold, each piece more dazzling than the last. Catherine was shocked, hardly able to believe the fortune. She had discovered treasure in her own house. "It's incredible, Mrs. Catherine," Martin exclaimed, his eyes wide with astonishment. "You are a lucky woman." Catherine, however, was stunned. She decided to keep the discovery a secret, sharing it only with her lawyer, who advised her to keep the valuables safe until she decided what to do with them. Throughout the days, Catherine pondered her basement discovery. The wealth she had found would change anyone's life, but for Catherine, the real value lay in the friendship she had found with Camilla, Martin, and their twins. No amount of money could buy what they had shared. With this realization, Catherine began to consider a plan, one that would turn the lives of everyone around her upside down. Years passed, and Catherine became an integral part of Camilla and Martin's family. The twins, Julia and Max, regarded Catherine as a grandmother, running to her with school stories and seeking advice. Catherine, in turn, delighted in their presence, her smile always brighter when she was with them. But the passage of time also brought challenges. Catherine's health began to decline, and old age proved to be a formidable opponent. Nevertheless, she refused to be defeated, always finding joy in the little things. "Catherine, you need to take care of yourself," Camilla would warn, concerned for her friend. "And I am, dear, I am," Catherine would respond with a smile. "I am surrounded by people I love, and that's all that matters." Life continued, filled with laughter and memories. The family Catherine found in Camilla, Martin, and their children was a gift she never expected but was infinitely grateful for. Meanwhile, John and Lily remained obsessed with their mother's wealth, convinced that she was hiding a fortune. They made plans to ensure that this wealth would end up in their hands, unaware of the treasure Catherine had discovered in the basement. Then, on a cold winter night, Catherine, sitting in her favorite armchair gazing at the flickering fireplace, made a decision. She called her lawyer and began planning her will. The choices she made that night would be the final and most surprising chapter of her life. Catherine's health continued to deteriorate over the months. Although sadness hung over the house, Catherine insisted on maintaining her smile, cheering up Julia and Max with her stories and assuring Camilla and Martin that she was okay. "You are the family I've chosen," she would say, holding their hands, "and I couldn't be more grateful." One day, when John and Lily came to visit, the tension was palpable. They noticed their mother's frailty, and although they were emotionally distant, the reality of the situation hit them like a gut punch. The last days. "Mom, you should be in a hospital," John said, trying to keep his voice steady. Lily nodded, avoiding her mother's gaze. "No, my dear," Catherine replied, looking at them with tired yet determined eyes. "This is my home, and it's where I want to spend my last days." John and Lily's visit was brief and awkward. When they left, a strange calm settled over the house. Catherine looked at them through the window, an unmistakable sadness in her eyes. "I hope they find happiness someday," she whispered to herself. "They deserve it despite everything." That would be Catherine's final encounter with her children. She somehow knew that time was running out, but she wasn't afraid. She had her family, Camilla, Martin, Julia, and Max, and she had her final plan, a plan that would bring justice and balance to everyone. The end came gently for Catherine. On a cold winter morning, she took her last breath with Camilla holding her hand. The loss was felt by everyone in the neighborhood. The kind lady who had brought so much warmth to their lives was gone. "I promise to take care of everything, Catherine," Camilla murmured, feeling a mixture of sadness and determination. "Rest in peace." John and Lily received the news with a strange mix of sadness and relief, sadness for the loss of their mother, relief for the prospect of the inheritance they believed was theirs. The community came out in full force for Catherine's funeral. Camilla and Martin, alongside Julia and Max, received condolences from friends and neighbors, all bringing stories of how Catherine had touched their lives. At the end of the funeral, a serious-looking lawyer approached the family. "I am David Lesh, Mrs. Catherine's attorney," he said, handing them sealed envelopes. "She requested these to be delivered after the funeral. There will be a reading of the will next week." Everyone's eyes widened at the mention of the will. Camilla and Martin looked at each other, while John and Lily could hardly hide their anticipation. "Thank you, Mr. Lesh," Camilla said, accepting the envelopes with a nod. And so, with Catherine's passing, a new series of events was set in motion. Catherine's final move was just beginning to unfold, promising to shock everyone with its final revelations. In the days following the funeral, Camilla and Martin, along with Julia and Max, reminisced about their memories of Catherine. The house felt empty without her presence, every corner reminding them of the love and warmth she had brought into their lives. The sealed envelope that David Lesh had handed to them sat on the dining table, a constant reminder of Catherine's final message. Finally, one evening, Camilla decided to open it. "Dear family," the letter began, written with Catherine's shaky handwriting. "If you are reading this, then I have already departed. But don't be sad. The will. Remember the laughter, the stories, and the shared meals. That is what truly matters," Catherine continued in the letter, expressing her love for all of them and how grateful she was to have them in her life. At the end, there was a reference to the will. "As for the will, you will find out everything during the reading," she wrote. "But know that I tried to do what I believe is fair. And Martin, you were my salvation and family when I needed it the most. Julia and Max, you were the joy that brightened my last years." The family finished reading the letter, their eyes filled with tears. Catherine's love for them was evident in every word. But what did she mean by "what I believe is fair"? The day of the will reading was approaching. Curiosity hung in the air, but so did a sense of apprehension. Catherine's final wishes were about to be revealed, and no one could predict what would come next. The office of esteemed lawyer David Lesh was filled with people on that particularly hot summer afternoon. Tall, expansive windows allowed golden rays of sunlight to bathe the room, casting long shadows on the polished wooden floor. Camilla and Martin, John and Lily, along with a few other community members who considered themselves close enough to Catherine to be present, were seated in leather chairs that creaked at the slightest shift in weight. The hum of the air conditioner was the only audible sound, a tense symphony of expectation hanging in the air thick like fog. At the center of the room, David Lesh stood behind a dark mahogany desk, sunlight reflecting off its polished surface and accentuating the grave expression on his face. He picked up the thick envelope, Catherine's will, and everyone held their breath, waiting for him to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," David Lesh began, his voice filling the room, echoing off the stone walls. "I am here to perform a duty of utmost importance and sensitivity, to read the last will and testament of our esteemed Catherine Bennett." He paused, looked at everyone present, and continued, "If you are ready." There was palpable tension in the room as David Lesh began reading the document in his hand. The words were clear, unequivocal. "To Camilla and Martin Robinson, I leave my residence and all my personal belongings," David Lesh read aloud. Whispers of surprise ran through the room, some looks of shock and disbelief directed towards Camilla and Martin, but no one was truly prepared for the bombshell that would be the next revelation. "As for my accumulated fortune in jewelry, gold, and diamonds," David Lesh continued, pausing for dramatic effect before announcing, "with a monetary value equivalent to several $1,000,000. The room erupted in hushed whispers, the previous tension evaporating and being replaced by palpable shock. And so, Catherine Bennett's final wishes began to change the course of everyone's lives in that room. "Exactly half of my fortune," David Lesch's voice echoed through the room, adding weight to the following words: "Shall be generously donated to the Pine Grove Elderly Home, the place where, under different circumstances, I would have spent my last days." John and Lily swallowed hard, each word of their mother's will undoing the promise of an easy inheritance and carefree life. Looks of surprise and disbelief were exchanged, while Camilla and Martin shared glances, nodding in silent understanding of Catherine's intentions. David Lesch continued, this time with a trace of hesitation in his voice. "And the other half of my fortune," he paused for dramatic effect, his eyes sweeping the stunned faces in the room, "shall be designated for Camilla and Martin's children, the young Julia and Max." The silence that followed was almost deafening. The air was charged with surprise and shocking disbelief. John and Lily seemed to have lost all color, their dreams of quick wealth crumbling like a house of cards. Camilla and Martin, on the other hand, looked at each other, their eyes wide with incredulity as they tried to grasp the magnitude of Catherine's generosity. In the end, David Lesch concluded the reading, choosing his words carefully. Catherine had left a final message for her biological children, John and Lily. He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing, "I hope you find the happiness you seek. And remember, money is not the source of joy. True joy comes from the people we love and how we treat others. As for my money, you have already had your portion from the sale of the house, in a situation where I felt deceived and practically coerced. You won't see another cent." The room immediately turned into a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. John and Lily, with expressions of anger and frustration, stormed out of the room, the echoes of their departure still lingering in the air. Camilla and Martin were practically immobile, struggling to process Catherine's unexpected generosity. One thing, however, was clear: Catherine's final wish had turned everything upside down, and nothing would ever be the same again. John and Lily were furious. How dare Catherine leave the majority of the fortune to strangers and to an elderly home, they fumed. They considered themselves her children, regardless of how they had treated her in recent years. "This isn't fair," John lamented to Lily as they settled into the car after the will reading. "We are her children. We'll contest the will. That money should be ours." "We'll contest the will," said John, his eyes gleaming with determination. She was senile. She didn't know what she was doing. Meanwhile, Camilla and Martin were in a state of shock. They had never expected to receive anything from Catherine, let alone a house and a fortune for their children. "We can't accept this," Martin said, visibly shaken. "She was our friend, not our benefactor." "I agree," Camilla said. Martin replied, holding her hand, "But maybe we can use this fortune to do something good, as Catherine would have wanted." As the storm brewed, Catherine's final will set the town into a frenzy. The following weeks promised to be filled with tension as the apparent heirs prepared for a battle that could change their lives forever. John and Lily sought out the best lawyers money could buy, attempting to contest Catherine's will. She was senile. Her mind wasn't clear when she made this will, argued John in court. On the other hand, Camilla and Martin, along with lawyer David Lesch, were ready to defend Catherine's will. "Your Honor," Catherine Bennett was fully aware of her actions. "This entire claim is just an act of greed," David Lesch argued. The courtroom sessions were intense. Testimonies were heard, evidence was presented, and nerves ran high. Finally, the judge delivered the verdict. After considering all the evidence and testimonies, it is clear that Catherine Bennett was in full possession of her mental faculties when drafting her will. The attempt to contest it is therefore rejected. Silence fell in the courtroom as the decision was announced. John and Lily were shocked, while Camilla and Martin felt a mixture of relief and sadness. They knew that this fortune represented the last tangible reminder of their dear friend Catherine. "It's not over," John snarled at Camilla and Martin as he left the courtroom. "I'll take this to the Court of Appeals." Camilla simply nodded, holding Martin's hand. They knew there was still a long road ahead, but for now, justice had prevailed. Catherine's will would be fulfilled as she had wished. Despite their threats, John and Lily never managed to take the case to the Court of Appeals. The defeat in the local court had depleted their resources, and the realization that their greed had led them to lose the last connection with their mother hit them hard. They retreated from the town, fading into the shadows of their own lives. Camilla and Martin, on the other hand, dedicated themselves to honoring Catherine's legacy in the most meaningful way possible. They invested their children's inheritance in education and established a fund for scholarships for underprivileged children in the town. Catherine's house was renovated, becoming not only a home for the family but a symbol of Catherine's love and generosity. "I don't know if we deserve all of this," Martin said one evening, watching their children play in the backyard. "It's not about deserving," Camilla replied, pulling him close. "It's about what we do with it. Catherine gave us a chance to make a difference, and that's what we're going to do." In the end, Catherine Bennett's story served as a reminder to the entire community. True wealth doesn't come from material possessions, but from the love and kindness we share with others. Her memory continued to live on, not only in the beautifully restored house or the scholarships granted, but in the hearts of those she touched with her generosity and love.
Laying down ceramic tiles, each measuring 4 x 4 inches, in a 10 x 12 kitchen demanded considerable effort. Ronnie Jackson meticulously applied adhesive to each tile before carefully aligning it with the previous one. Ensuring proper alignment, he nodded in satisfaction, recognizing that even minor deviations in millimeters could jeopardize the project's success. Given Eccles' renovation and remodeling's commitment to 100% satisfaction, Ronnie ensured every tile was flawlessly installed before proceeding. Sensing the completion of a row, Charlotte, Ronnie's wife, contacted Eccles on Ronnie's behalf. Answering the call, Ronnie prepared to begin the next row, already reaching for the box of tiles. The days when Charlotte greeted him warmly were gone. Her inquiries had become curt and impatient. Charlotte asked when he would be done. Ronnie assessed his progress and estimated it would take him about 3 hours in Pritchard's kitchen. After hearing his response, Charlotte ended the call abruptly, leaving Ronnie feeling pressured to hurry up. Despite his eagerness to finish quickly, Ronnie compelled himself to work with deliberate precision. Amidst his tasks, thoughts of his wife, with whom he had shared over 2 decades, lingered. Ronnie's acquaintance with Charlotte began at Eccles' renovation and remodeling, where he first encountered her during his early days on the job. As Charlotte entered John Eccles' office, apologizing for her academic shortcomings at John W. Dawson High School, Ronnie observed her stout figure and long, wavy hair. Though distracted momentarily, he refocused on the array of hand tools in John's shed, only to be reminded sharply by John that Charlotte was his daughter. "Yes, sir," Ronnie responded, resisting the impulse to shrug apathetically. Sensing her father's reluctance for her to engage with his new employee, Charlotte adopted a habit of smiling flirtatiously and greeting Ronnie whenever they crossed paths. Ronnie remained courteous towards her, but didn't encourage her attention. "You understand, right?" John admonished Ronnie. "I don't want you chasing after my daughter, got it?" "I'm not pursuing your daughter," Ronnie replied honestly. In truth, 21-year-old Ronnie found 17-year-old Charlotte Rayner Eccles nothing more than a nuisance. She carried at least 50 extra pounds, struggled with severe acne, and possessed qualities that Ronnie found particularly unattractive. Additionally, he considered Charlotte to be quite immature. "Hey, Ronnie," Charlotte said coyly one day as Ronnie and another Eccles employee were unloading their equipment after a long day. "Uh-huh," Ronnie said, struggling with an unopened bag of quick-drying cement. "Listen, I turn 18 on Saturday." Charlotte leaned forward, granting Ronnie an unhindered sight of her blouse's front. "That looks nice," Ronnie remarked. "Happy birthday," another coworker chimed in with a smile. "So, Ronnie, what's my birthday present?" Charlotte playfully inquired. Close your eyes," Ronnie proposed, dragging his bag to the pickup truck's rear door. "Sure thing," Charlotte giggled. "What do you see?" Ronnie asked, tossing his bag into the vehicle. Nothing," Charlotte replied. "This is your gift. Happy birthday," Ronnie announced, dragging the bag of cement towards the barn. Lois Ackles compelled John Ackles to invite Ronnie Jackson to their home for Charlotte's birthday celebration. A medical store in Dolans, Utah sold Ronnie a lovely birthday card, while a pawn shop in Fairway, Utah provided him with a beautiful silver bracelet for $20. Lois pressured John into asking Ronnie to escort Charlotte to the prom. Despite wincing at Charlotte's appearance in a tight sleeveless dress, Ronnie courteously accompanied her, posing for photos, dancing with her, and escorting her home with a goodnight kiss. Days later, John reprimanded Ronnie for Charlotte's heartbreak due to his failure to call her. Despite his reluctance, Ronnie contacted Charlotte and asked her out, leading to subsequent dates. On the fifth date, Charlotte gave Ronnie her pureness. Tracy Lois Jackson was born 5 months after their wedding, and for the subsequent decade, Ronnie Jackson endured the least desirable assignments at Eccles Renovations and Remodeling. Ronnie was convinced that on some occasions, John Eccles deliberately secured jobs for Eccles Renovation and Remodeling just to burden his son-in-law with arduous tasks. Throughout the first 16 years of their marriage, Charlotte Jackson proved to be a devoted wife, striving to understand her husband's preferences and dislikes, mastering his favorite dishes, and observing silence on Sundays during Denver Broncos games. Charlotte also made efforts to lose weight, albeit with fluctuating success. Her skin improved somewhat, but acne scars remained visible, even with the aid of cosmetics. Despite these challenges, when Tracy attended Grover Cleveland Elementary School, Charlotte secured employment at the Garland County Public Library. Despite its modest pay, the comprehensive benefits, including health and dental insurance, made it a valuable opportunity. Right after commemorating their 16th wedding anniversary, Charlotte's cousin Darlene relocated to Dolans, Utah with her third or fourth husband in tow, their whereabouts a mystery. Darlene's boisterous, crude nature was matched by her husband Gary, who was no better, particularly since he was an ardent Dallas Cowboys fan. Unfortunately, Darlene's negative influence rubbed off on Charlotte, who became loud, brash, and prone to complaints, neglecting household duties, including cooking. Despite this, Ronnie, skilled in the kitchen and cleaning, didn't mind the extra workload. However, what was initially occasional slack turned into a nightly occurrence, as Charlotte, Darlene, and Gary often found activities outside the Jackson house. Meanwhile, Tracy learned household chores and sewing buttons on her school uniform, harboring resentment toward her father for her mother's neglect, rather than directing it at her mother. Ronnie's timing was almost impeccable. 3 hours after Charlotte's call, he completed the threshold installation. Struggling with stiffness in his back, Ronnie pondered his age while gathering tools and remaining tiles from the Pritchard house. Contacting Joan Eccles, Ronnie winced at the man's slurred speech, a result of a near-fatal blow that left him recovering slowly. John suffered a massive stroke shortly after his wife Lois disclosed her breast cancer diagnosis. Despite Lois's double mastectomy and radiation treatment, she remained burdened with caring for her husband, Dennis Eccles, aided by their sons Brian and Paul, along with Ronnie's assistance when necessary. Charlotte, the family's sole daughter, remained her mother's constant companion, driving her to Fairway Hospital and offering comfort during her moments of pain. Despite Lois's passing, John appeared reluctant to let go of life. Daily, he was wheeled into the office, cursing his useless left hand as he attempted to type on his computer keyboard. Afterwards, Dennis, Brian, or Paul would drive John home. Ronnie informed John over the phone that he was leaving Pritchard's job, and it was finished. John responded with grunts, barks, and wheezes. Back home, Ronnie savored the aroma of his favorite meal: pork chops, mashed potatoes, and French-cut green beans. After John suffered a debilitating stroke, Charlotte put the Jackson family on a heart-healthy diet. Despite losing 40 pounds on the diet, Charlotte remained overweight. Ronnie accused Tracy of going to Brigham Young University solely to avoid Charlotte's bland cooking, a claim Tracy didn't dispute. While Charlotte was busy at the stove, Ronnie leaned in for a kiss, but she waved him away and pinched her nose. Ronnie tossed his clothes into the hamper and washed away the sweat from his tired body. This work was tough enough when he was 21, and at 43, it strained his capabilities and didn't benefit his health. However, Dennis, Brian, and Paul paid no heed to his struggles. With mounting medical bills from John Eccles' rehabilitation, they claimed there was no money in the budget to hire help. Drying himself off, Ronnie ignored the reflection of a fit man in the foggy mirror. Clad in a t-shirt and shorts, he went downstairs just as Charlotte was setting his plate. "For dessert, we've got hot apple pie," Charlotte announced, placing a frosted mug and a can of beer before him. "Oh my God," Ronnie exclaimed inwardly, feeling bile rise in his stomach. He recalled the last time Charlotte served him frosted beer, enjoying it on her 35th birthday, months before their 17th anniversary. As Tracy was out with friends, Charlotte poured Ronnie a beer in a frosted mug. He savored the taste of the cold drink until Charlotte interrupted, saying, "Darling, there's something I need to talk to you about." Ronnie remained silent as Charlotte spoke at length about nothing in particular. Eventually, Ronnie urged her to get to the point, as his beer was almost finished. Charlotte then revealed that Darlene and Gary weren't exclusive. They had an open marriage. She then asked Ronnie if he had ever considered being unfaithful. "Indeed, I am a man," Ronnie affirmed. "I was eyeing that girl Shelley at the gas station," he confessed. Charlotte retorted, "Shelley from the gas station? As if you'd ever stand a chance." "But I'm married," Ronnie added. "Sure, I think about it, but that's where it ends." "Did you think I'd take it further?" Charlotte pressed on. "Did you believe you could act without facing consequences?" "I can't, Charlotte," Ronnie stated. "We're married. We made vows before our family and friends." Finishing his drink, Ronnie got up, cleaned his mug, and said, "We pledge to be faithful, to forsake all others, including Shelley from the gas station." "We could renew our vows," Charlotte proposed. "No new vows?" Ronnie replied firmly, placing the clean mug in the cabinet. "Our original vows suffice. While Darlene and Gary may have an open marriage, we don't and never will." "But," Charlotte began. "No buts. End of discussion," Ronnie cut in, exiting the kitchen. Ronnie hoped that was the end of it. However, Charlotte revisited the topic twice more. Each time, Ronnie firmly declined. "But honey," Charlotte persisted, "it's a testament to our love. We trust each other enough for this." Annoyed, Ronnie retorted, "Do you even hear the nonsense you're saying? If you think I should let you cheat to prove my love, maybe I don't love you." Frustrated, when Charlotte mentioned an open marriage for the 4th time, Ronnie called her father. Charlotte watched the phone ring. "Hello, John. How are you?" Ronnie greeted. Charlotte's expression turned pale, realizing Ronnie was speaking to her father. Adding to her unease, Ronnie asked for Lois. "Hey, Lois, Charlotte has something to share with you," Ronnie conveyed. "Charlotte, tell your mom about what Darlene told you." Reluctantly, Charlotte took the phone from Ronnie. As she tried to stand from the table, Ronnie, foreseeing her move, firmly restrained her. Feeling cornered, Charlotte rambled incoherently and eventually ended the call. "You're despicable," she snapped at Ronnie. "Listen, Charlotte," Ronnie warned. "Mention this open marriage idea again, and our marriage will end. We'll get divorced." Charlotte never raised the topic again. Relieved, Ronnie noticed Darlene and Gary's efforts to reach out diminished. The pair, labeled the Toxic Twins by Ronnie, visited less frequently. Fast forward 5 years, Ronnie observed Charlotte pouring his beer, nearly overflowing with foam. She wasn't adept at it. "I'll be 40 next Tuesday," Charlotte began as Ronnie tasted his pork chop. "Yes," he acknowledged, swallowing. "And I was a Vestal when we met," Charlotte added. "Turning 40 and being a Vestal," Ronnie remarked, taking another bite. "The big 40, Charlotte emphasized. "During all this time, I've only been with one man, luckily for you," Ronnie quipped. "You've been with what, at least 10 women?" Kid Charlotte queried. "Is that fair?" "Life isn't always fair," Ronnie responded, sipping his beer. "Considering my upcoming birthday and all I've done for you, Tracy, and my parents, I think I deserve some freedom. Darlene and I are heading to Las Vegas next week. She found a good deal at a casino," Charlotte shared. Ronnie continued eating and drinking. "While there, we might meet some guys," Charlotte proposed. "Not necessarily for anything serious, just a date. Let me see what it's like with someone else. It might make me value what I have even more," she said. "The sauce is almost perfect," Ronnie commented. "What's your take?" Charlotte inquired. "I've told you. The sauce is nearly spot on," Ronnie responded. "Charlotte, this is about me branching out, gaining experience," Charlotte retorted. "So, you're suggesting I'm being unfaithful?" Ronnie questioned. "I've made up my mind," Charlotte asserted. "You can either support me or opt for a divorce. Your choice." "I'll initiate the divorce," Ronnie stated. "Do we have any ice cream for this pie?" "Hold on, Charlotte. Divorces cost a fortune. We can't just brush that aside," Ronnie exclaimed, surprised. "What's there to discuss? You've clearly decided everything. You and your dubious cousin are heading to Vegas. You're not asking. You've already chosen Vegas." Forget our massive pile of bills here. You're off to Vegas for your Big Four celebration. And while you're at it, maybe a date? Even though you're married, you think that's okay? I either support your plan or face divorce, Ronnie said, pushing his empty plate away. Does this pie come with ice cream? It's just for 1 week, Charlotte defended. A week, a day, a minute. It doesn't change anything, Charlotte, Ronnie responded, slicing a piece of pie. Infidelity is infidelity, and I won't be married to a cheater. So, no ice cream. Maybe you can take Darlene, Charlotte proposed. Absolutely not, Ronnie chuckled. Charlotte, I wouldn't be with Darlene if she were the last person on Earth. Ronnie tasted the pie, frowned in distaste, and said, Oh, wonderful. You used that aspartame stuff, didn't you? Pushing his plate away. Standing up, Ronnie wiped his mouth, exiting the kitchen. I'm seeing a lawyer tomorrow to start the divorce process, Ronnie declared, heading upstairs. Pritchard's job was done, and Dennis wasn't planning anything until he got the green light to rebuild the federal savings and loan. But Ronnie... You never listen, Charlotte interjected. Sure, Ronnie yelled from downstairs. You never heard me. I told you the consequences if you brought this up again. We're getting divorced. In their third bedroom turned home office, Ronnie powered up the computer. Though outdated, it still functioned and had internet access. After entering a search, Ronnie began looking for lawyers. He found Penny Barnes's online form and completed it. Shortly after, he received a call confirming an appointment with Penny Barnes. The next morning at 10, after Charlotte cleaned the kitchen, she went upstairs. Undressing, she got into bed undressed. When Charlotte pressed against him, Ronnie pulled away. No thanks, he said, turning away. Good night. Ronnie woke up at his regular time, 5:30 in the morning. Even though he didn't have work, he still rose at his customary hour. Quietly, he left the bed and softly closed their bedroom door. Descending to the kitchen, he brewed coffee and checked his email on his cell phone. An email from Penny Barnes's office detailed what he should bring to the 7 o'clock meeting. Ronnie debated having a second cup of coffee. Hearing Charlotte moving around upstairs, he chose not to make coffee for her. If she wanted some, she could make it herself. No, I told him, give it to me. Charlotte's voice came from her cell phone as she descended the stairs. Spotting Ronnie calmly reading news on his phone, she let out a shriek. She quickly ended her call and pocketed her phone. Ronnie, what are you doing here? Charlotte inquired. I mentioned Dennis hasn't received approval to start rebuilding the federal savings and loan, so I'm free today, Ronnie replied. The grass is too damp to mow, so I caught up on today's news. Did you hear Burns & Burns is considering a second location? You could have saved me some coffee, Charlotte complained. You can ask Darlene to make you some, Ronnie replied, placing his cup in the sink. Penny Barnes, an attractive brunette, wore glasses that Ronnie suspected were just for show, to appear more intellectual and serious. Penny remarked, examining their financial documents. You recently refinanced at 3.9%? My daughter's in her final year, Ronnie explained. Plus, my in-laws had hefty medical bills. Their deductibles were sky high, then funeral costs. And Eccles was nearly bankrupt. A couple of projects went over budget because Paul failed to time the orders right. Yes, Penny nodded, reading on. So, Mr. Jackson, how will divorcing your employer's daughter impact your job? I plan to end the relationship, Ronnie responded, a hint of a smile appearing. But Mrs. Jackson's position at the Garland County Public Library shouldn't be jeopardized, Penny speculated. By Friday, Dennis still hadn't gotten the go-ahead for the federal savings and loan renovations. Ronnie was at home completing renovations when Charlotte called. What's this? What kind of scam? Charlotte yelled as Ronnie picked up. Oh, you have the documents, Ronnie remarked. What's the issue with the first-floor bathroom? You mentioned something needs fixing, but honestly, I can't figure out the problem, Ronnie asked. The lock is sticking, Charlotte replied. We'll need to discuss this when I get home, all right? No, we've already had that discussion. Talking hasn't helped, especially when you seem more inclined to heed Darlene over your own husband. So I'm done talking, Ronnie stated firmly. All right, I see what's going on. Got it. Goodbye. But I don't want a divorce, Charlotte lamented. And I don't want to be married to an unfaithful person, Ronnie shot back. Anything else? No. Goodbye then. Ronnie declined Charlotte's subsequent call. When John's number flashed on the screen, Ronnie set down his screwdriver and answered. Hello? Ronnie greeted. John erupted with a mix of frustrated sounds and exclamations. Ronnie was surprised at the range of swear words he could discern as his father-in-law pressed for details about Ronnie and Charlotte. It's pretty straightforward, sir, Ronnie began. Darlene and her spouse practice an open marriage, And they influenced Charlotte to consider it too. I made it clear I'm not interested in that. Amidst another emotional outburst from John, Ronnie continued, Your daughter gave me an ultimatum last night, accept it or divorce. So, I chose divorce. John attempted to argue further, even resorting to emotional manipulation. Sir, I appreciate your concern, Ronnie fibbed. But with 3 sons and a daughter, this issue should be handled by them, not me. Besides, why would I want a business that's been losing money for 3 years? Ronnie muttered to himself. Charlotte returned home with reinforcements. Ronnie anticipated this and remained silent as Darlene and Gary voiced their perspectives. You see, Ronnie, since we're secure in our marriage, Gary smirked, Darlene can maintain friendships outside of it. I mean, as long as she returns to me, right? Darlene added. And we share everything. No secrets. It's brought us closer. Well, that certainly brings clarity, Ronnie remarked. Charlotte, Darlene, and Gary smiled in response. Actually, Ronnie corrected, rising from the couch, after our divorce, Charlotte, feel free to share your life and inner world with whomever you choose. Oh, what's this? Gary smirked. So just because you feel inadequate, Charlotte should suppress her own talents and desires? Ronnie flashed a grin, revealing all his teeth. He then strolled to the living room exit, facing the stairs. If believing that makes you feel better, go right ahead, Ronnie said, departing the room once more. That night, Charlotte attempted to initiate closeness. Rest up, Charlotte. You've got a busy day ahead, don't you? Ronnie said with a grin. As was his routine, Ronnie woke at 5:30 and left the bed. He no longer concerned himself with closing their bedroom door, indifferent to whether his early movements disturbed Charlotte. Descending the stairs, he brewed coffee, sipped it while perusing the news on his phone, and found himself scoffing at national headlines. These politicians really should live by their own standards. Lifetime perks? Forget it. Try living on Social Security. Private health care? Nope. Here's the same insurance they've mandated for everyone else. At 11, Gary knocked on the door. Ronnie answered, and Gary attempted to enter. Ronnie's firm hand halted Gary's eager advance. What's up? Ronnie inquired. I'm here to pick up Charlotte for the airport, Gary explained, making another attempt to enter. I'll inform her you're here, Ronnie said, nudging Gary back and shutting the door, returning to his recorded sitcom. Shortly after, Charlotte descended the stairs with her suitcase. Why didn't you tell me Gary and Darlene were waiting outside? She demanded of Ronnie. Oh, right. Gary and Darlene are here, Ronnie replied, refocusing on his show. Seriously? Must you act so immaturely? Charlotte exclaimed. As she leaned in towards Ronnie, he sidestepped, leaving her to kiss the empty air. We'll discuss this when I return, Charlotte stated. No, we won't be doing that, Ronnie responded. After watching his sitcom and enjoying a satisfying meal, Ronnie finished his tasks by painting the front door a pale yellow. It complemented the house's red brick exterior beautifully. He chuckled when their cat, Samson, meowed from the garage. Samson was well provided for with food, water, and a clean litter box. I'll let you out once the paint dries, buddy, Ronnie assured the cat. Upstairs, he canceled their shared credit cards. He wasn't aware of any cards Charlotte had separately and had no intention of supporting her indiscretions or her cousin's lavish lifestyle. He accessed Charlotte's personal bank account and withdrew half the balance. Similarly, he withdrew half from their joint account, from which he was the sole contributor. Utilizing the bank's website, he opened a new account solely in his name and transferred the withdrawn funds there. Online services facilitated the removal of his name from utilities and cable TV. He shrugged off an email from Garland County Power and Light, stating the cancellation would occur at the billing cycle's end. Doesn't matter, Ronnie commented to the screen. Time for Sloan's Pizza, Ronnie thought as his stomach rumbled. Charlotte never let me eat there. Maybe I'll drop dead from a heart attack. He ordered pizza and a draft beer. He flirted with the waitress, even though she was significantly overweight. She smiled, tapping his wedding ring with her long nail. Ronnie glanced at the ring, his mood souring. He thanked her, left a tip in his truck, and departed. After considerable effort, Ronnie removed the ring, placing it in the console cup holder. Forever love, huh, Charlotte? He mused aloud. Guess that ended today. His truck signaled low fuel. At the gas station, he initially chose $10 worth, but decided to fill the tank completely. Filling 22 gallons sure takes time, Ronnie commented as the pump continued to gurgle. He visited a nearby convenience store and found Budweiser beer. While walking past another set of refrigerators, he noticed containers of ice cream. He picked up a pint of strawberry ice cream and brought both items to the counter. Shelley was no longer working there. She had gotten married. Much to the disappointment of Ronnie and many other men who frequented that gas station, just to see her behind the counter. However, Shannon Carlisle, a petite brunette now working there, was almost as attractive as Shelley. Ronnie grinned as Shannon stepped onto a milk crate she had placed by the cash register. On a previous occasion, he had asked her height, to which she sharply responded, "I'm 4 feet 8 inches tall." "How short are you?" Ronnie quipped. Her eyes widened momentarily, then she burst into hearty laughter, brightening her already pretty face. From then on, she affectionately referred to Ronnie as Shorty. "Your wife out of town, Shorty?" Shannon inquired, observing his purchases. "My wife is gone for good," Ronnie replied. Shannon glanced at Ronnie's left hand, then met his eyes. After studying his face briefly, she asked, "So where are you taking me on our first date?" Brushing her thick brown hair back with her hand. "Shannon, as lovely as you are, why would you want to date an old guy like me?" Ronnie questioned. "That's about 7 inches, Shannon remarked, bagging Ronnie's items. Charlotte's 40th birthday was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, their daughter Tracy called Ronnie. "Eckley's renovation and remodeling," Ronnie answered. "Dad, yesterday was Mom's birthday," Tracy informed him. "Yeah, so?" Ronnie responded, scratching his stubbled face. "Why didn't you call her?" Tracy pressed. "I didn't want this," Ronnie sighed. "I just didn't, kiddo." "Why?" Tracy persisted. "You'll understand soon," Ronnie replied. "Your mother believes that now that she's 40, she should be with other men." "What?" Tracy exclaimed. "What do they teach you in school?" Ronnie retorted. "She's married. Married women don't date other men," Tracy clarified. "Oh, that's so old-fashioned," Tracy laughed. "Goodbye, Tracy," Ronnie said, ending the call. 10 minutes later, Charlotte's number appeared on Ronnie's phone. Despite recognizing the caller, he answered, "Eckley's renovation and remodeling." "Hi, Ronnie," Charlotte greeted firmly. "So, how's being a 40-year-old?" Ronnie quipped. "This isn't a joke, Ronnie," Charlotte snapped. "I agree, it's not funny," Ronnie conceded. "And thanks for canceling the credit cards," Charlotte added. "You're welcome," Ronnie responded. "Anything else?" "My birthday was yesterday," Charlotte mentioned. "Why didn't you call?" Ronnie questioned. "I didn't want this. Maybe whoever you're with would have wished you," Ronnie suggested. "Grow up, Ronnie," Charlotte retorted. "Really, Charlotte? Adults honor their commitments and respect their vows," Ronnie stated. "Who's Melissa Kalick?" Charlotte inquired. "Remember Melissa Strome? She married Lucy Kalick, the bank manager," Ronnie clarified. "Regardless, she's employed at Gold Standard Real Estate now. I've got this adorable redhead. She's as charming as can be. On the bright side, she believes she can quickly find a buyer for our house," Ronnie shared. "Buyer? Ronnie, we aren't selling the house," Charlotte exclaimed over the phone. "Can you really afford to surprise me like this? We have to settle the second mortgage, as Melissa informed me. She might find a buyer, but will likely need to bring cash to clear that mortgage," Ronnie replied. "We're not selling the house," Charlotte reiterated loudly. "I've stored all your furniture at the EZ warehouse on Independence Road, next to Chevrolet Place," Ronnie added. "Unit 212. Your dad has the key." "Oh, Lord, Ronnie, I need to get home." Charlotte's voice was filled with distress. "Your dad couldn't fetch Samson, so I took him to Dennis's," Ronnie continued. "Dennis? Oh, God, Dennis has those Dobermans," Charlotte exclaimed in terror. Shoot, I didn't consider that," Ronnie chuckled. "No wonder he was keen on adopting that cat." Ignoring his wife's pleas, Ronnie ended the call. Leaving the phone on the kitchen counter, he headed upstairs to surf the internet. He heard his cell phone ring, but chose to ignore it. "And maybe your mom's new boyfriend can cover his final school year," Ronnie muttered. "Why don't you check for a scholarship for students with a GPA of 2.1? Because with that attitude, it's tough to expect your dad to finance your education," he retorted. After shutting down the computer, Ronnie shaved, removing 3 days of stubble carefully. He then took a hot shower, got dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. The computer was in the pickup truck's cab, behind the passenger seat. As his final act, Ronnie discarded his cell phone in the trash and wheeled the trash can to the curb. "Going to miss you," Herman Vogart, a neighbor, greeted Ronnie on the street. "Vogart, you won't do this," Ronnie laughed, shaking Herman's hand. "The most we spoke was when you griped about Tracy's boys blasting their music. It's tough getting neighbors to give you space." "Ah, man," Herman sighed. "You were the ideal neighbor. Never borrowed stuff, never asked me to feed your cat or collect your mail during vacations. I bet the next folks will be all over me." "You brought it on yourself being so friendly," Ronnie remarked. "The trash can's ringing," Herman pointed out. "Mind your business. It's probably some critter," Ronnie smirked, shaking Herman's hand again. Charlotte tried unlocking the front door, but found her key didn't fit. She pulled out her phone, dialed the number for Gold Standard Real Estate listed on the sign, and stared at it in disbelief. Her phone was fully charged, but it seemed faulty. Darlene lent Charlotte her cell, while Gary checked the house's windows and doors. Charlotte whispered curses when the call connected. "Gold Standard Real Estate, Melissa Kalick speaking," Melissa greeted cheerfully. "This is Charlotte Jackson," Charlotte snapped. "My key doesn't work at my house." "Ah, Ronald Jackson's ex?" Melissa chirped. "Ex? Charlotte retorted. "I need to sign some paperwork," Melissa continued. "Guess what? I have clients interested in your home." "It's not for sale," Charlotte exclaimed. "So, are you buying out Mr. Jackson?" Melissa probed. "The Richmonds might be disappointed. They liked the Purcell house, too." Gary returned, confirming the house was secure. Charlotte reiterated the house wasn't for sale and called Ronnie. "You idiot," Charlotte muttered as Ronnie's voice answered. "Eccles Renovations and Remodeling." "Can we drop you somewhere?" Gary interrupted, growing impatient. "My cat," Charlotte remembered, squeezing back into the car. "Hey," Dennis answered. "It's me," Ronnie said. "He gave Samson to you?" Charlotte asked. "With poppy, olive oil, and Blue Tool around? They'd shred that cat," Dennis snapped. "No, Dad has him. You need to get him. Dad's physical therapist is allergic." "Thank goodness," Charlotte sighed. "Thanks," Dennis continued. "Ronnie's disappearance almost bankrupted us. I secured a federal loan but had to let Framonte take it because none of us can lay ceramic tile." "Uh-huh," Charlotte interrupted. "Who else are you calling?" Darlene snapped as Charlotte dialed her dad's number. "Don't you have unlimited?" Charlotte asked. "Nope, 1,000 minutes monthly. Mr. Football used most," Darlene replied. "Last call," Charlotte assured. John angrily agreed to let her come over. Gary drove them to John Eccles' house. Darlene and Charlotte hugged, and Charlotte headed inside. "How was it?" Gary asked Darlene as she got in the car. "Disastrous," Darlene sighed. "Who'd want her?" "Not with you around," Gary joked, watching Charlotte enter. "Any money from her?" Darlene inquired. "Almost," Gary said, pulling out. "Ronnie's such a pain." "Can you hear me?" Darlene sounded frustrated. "He canceled her credit cards. She used her debit," Gary explained. "ATMs are everywhere," Darlene pointed out. "She got about $10, Gary muttered. "We need gas," Darlene stated. "With ATMs and the internet, she's fine," Gary reasoned. "Unless your football-obsessed hubby isn't hogging minutes," Darlene retorted. "Here's $20, Gary handed Darlene. "She went online," Darlene concluded. "What's the connection to ATMs?" Gary inquired as he steered into the gas station. Charlotte noticed Ronnie covered half her bill. "Just grab $10, all right? We still have the electricity bill to cover unless you've settled it already," Darlene suggested. Gary nodded and entered the adjoining convenience store. Darlene observed Gary glance at the beer cooler and then honk the car horn. Gary shot her a disapproving look through the store's window, but proceeded to the counter. "I was only getting one can," Gary claimed upon his return. "Just one?" Darlene retorted. "When was the last time you settled for just one can?" Gary mumbled. "Hey, isn't that petite lady new here? How come she has such prominent chest?" Gary commented. "She's petite, so her chest seemed larger in comparison," Darlene corrected. "Let's get that gas," Gary urged. "Fine," Darlene responded reluctantly. Amidst their argument, Charlotte endured her father's furious monologue. Since his stroke, John's language has become increasingly crude, and he didn't shy away from using derogatory and harmful words to describe those around him. "When was the last time you looked in the mirror?" John questioned. "Fat pig. That face looks like it was doused and saved with an ice pick," John went on. "Dad!" Charlotte exclaimed, deeply hurt. "Turning 40? So what? Women hit 40 every day," John grumbled. "But not all betray their family at 40. John gestured towards legal documents on the coffee table. Just then, Samson entered the room. "You'll need a lawyer, and I have to clean that cat litter box," John snapped. "Good Lord. I don't know what that animal eats, but it stinks to high heaven," John muttered. "You're back in your old room," John said tersely. "I hope betraying us was worth it. Do you hear me? I hope it was. 40 years old and still making foolish choices." Later that night, lying in her childhood bed, Charlotte gazed at the wallpaper she and her mother had chosen when she was 8. Samson remained still as Charlotte switched off the light, staring into the darkness. The week of her 40th birthday had begun on a high note. The flight to Vegas was smooth, Charlotte recalled, watching the city lights emerge below. After checking into their hotel, Charlotte and Darlene tried their luck at the roulette table before opting for dinner. Charlotte felt humiliated when a waiter informed her credit card was declined. The second met the same fate. The manager brought out her third card with a stern expression. Charlotte tried her debit card, which thankfully went through. Upon checking her bank, she discovered her balance had been halved. Both she and Darlene blamed Ronnie Jackson, feeling he had overstepped. Way overstepped. "Come on, Darlene," Darlene urged. "We're in Vegas. We can't let this setback spoil our fun, right?" However, watching Darlene lose $300 at the blackjack table dimmed the evening's excitement a bit. "That was Charlotte's $300, Darlene muttered. Charlotte struck up a conversation with a handsome young man at a bar, 25-year-old David Daltrey, and they headed to her room. "It was a brief 4 minutes, Charlotte," Darlene quipped. Charlotte caught David attempting to snatch her wallet from her purse. Darlene lamented her $100 daily limit. "Lady Luck wasn't on Darlene's side this trip," Charlotte joked. "Darlene's $100 seemed to vanish as soon as she left the hotel room." "On Tuesday evening, my birthday, I approached another young man," Charlotte remembered. He smirked and said, "Lady, if I wanted closeness with a 300-pound woman, I'd be home with my wife." He then suggested a blind convention nearby, mocking my appearance. Feeling hurt, Charlotte took the elevator to their room. Seeing the "Do Not Disturb" sign, she groaned and spent hours in the lobby coffee shop. Eventually, she messaged Darlene about returning. Back in her room after a shower, Charlotte wore hot lingerie and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She noticed Ronnie hadn't called or texted for her birthday. Tracy didn't call either, but sent a birthday text. Checking her phone, Charlotte felt the sting of her husband's neglect. Yet she appreciated birthday wishes from Dennis, Brian, and Paul. The next morning, Darlene grumbled about the budget, hinting she paid for their flight and hotel. By Saturday, Charlotte contemplated ending her relationship with Darlene due to her constant complaints. But with Darlene holding their airline tickets, Charlotte stayed quiet. Now in her childhood room, Charlotte sighed deeply. Her birthday month was far from a celebration. Jim Runkles, recommended by Freddie Baxter from the Garland County Public Library, reviewed the papers from Penny Barnes's office. He then delivered a blunt assessment. "He gets half, you get half. The house must be sold, with profits split evenly. Expenses are shared. Despite his unemployment, he isn't seeking child support," Jim stated. "But I don't want a divorce," Charlotte protested. "I don't want to lose my home. I don't want to miss Jackson." "It doesn't change the facts," Jim responded. "One person wants a divorce, and that can lead to it." "Can we get a consultation?" Charlotte asked. "We can request one," Jim confirmed, and Charlotte smiled. "I'll call Penny's office." Listening to Jim, Charlotte glanced at his book titles, hearing mostly "uh-huh" and from him. "All right, Mrs. Jackson, here's the issue," Jim stated, setting his phone on the table. "I'm paying you to avoid issues," Charlotte responded, gripping her purse firmly. "Miss Barnes doesn't know where her client is. Your husband came, settled her fee, and departed," Jim relayed. "She only possesses his email address." "Is that essential?" "It's her sole means to reach him. And no, she won't disclose the email. It's protected by attorney-client privilege," Jim clarified. "Oh," Charlotte murmured, settling back in her chair. "Ronnie informed Miss Barnes that henceforth your daughter will cover her tuition and dorm costs," Jim added. He mentioned something about initiating new traditions. "Do you grasp what he's implying?" Charlotte inquired. "No," Charlotte whispered, "but I suspect Tracy might." Charlotte bypassed her 41st birthday, dressing for work and leaving her room. John remained absorbed, hands limp on his lap, when his daughter planted a kiss on his cheek. "Anything you need before I head out?" Charlotte queried. "No," John mumbled. "All right, I'll depart. Take care of Samson, all right?" Charlotte endeavored to inject cheer into her voice. "Everything's fine. My 2 main guys will be good. Got it?" John responded, his words interspersed with grunts and barks. Charlotte commuted to work, following her familiar route from her dad's residence to the library. Her phone buzzed, but she waited until parking to check. "Happy birthday," flashed on her screen. "Thanks, Tracy," Charlotte responded flatly. "Thrilled for my birthday, just brimming with joy." Still, she acknowledged Tracy's greeting. Despite shedding 25 pounds since turning 40, Charlotte's transformation went unnoticed. She felt overlooked since Ronnie's departure. Shortly after Ronnie exited, Charlotte discerned the nature of Darlene and Gary's open marriage. Financial constraints bound them, leading to a loveless coexistence in a trailer as mere roommates. Darlene and Gary lacked affectionate gestures. Charlotte recalled Ronnie's warmth and kisses, especially after she cooked him a meal. However, after announcing her solo Vegas trip for her 40th, Ronnie's affection waned. Their last encounter ended with Ronnie evading her kiss. An hour post Tracy's text, Charlotte's phone rang. Reading a message from her boss questioning her tardiness, she disembarked from her car, dazed, and approached her workplace's rear entrance. Tracy received a thank you text from her mom for the birthday wishes, followed by a picture of a brown-haired little girl gazing back at her. Antoinette Barbara Jackson, weighing 6 pounds, 4 ounces, and measuring 17 inches, checked a text from her father's phone. Tracy found it ironic that her mom and younger sister shared a birthday. She doubted her mom would see the humor, or if her dad even remembered. "Is this Shannon Parquet? Becky McMahon here," a brunette stated over the phone. "We offer carpets, tiles, hardwoods, and laminate flooring." "Hey, Shorty," a voice teased on the line. "Pardon me," Ronnie Jackson told a couple choosing hardwood floor colors. He signaled Bobby to assist them and picked up the call. The man nodded and approached the couple. Ronnie moved to the wall phone and answered the blinking line. Scanning the trading floor, he listened attentively. He awaited news from Samuel D. about securing an exclusive flooring contract for the developer's projects. "Listening, Shorty," Ronnie greeted. "Guess what, Mr. Shorty?" Shannon's voice teased. "Looks like you and your 7 inches are making me a mom again." "Shannon, really?" Ronnie exclaimed in surprise. "Tony's still in diapers and we're expecting another?" Shannon giggled on the other end. "Where are you?" Ronnie asked. "Just left Dr. Pruitt's," Shannon replied. "Hurry over," Ronnie urged. "We're celebrating at the Stone Grill. All this talk about my figure is why we're in this situation," Shannon chuckled, pushing Tony's stroller from Alliance Square Medical Center into the Texas heat. At 4'8", she brushed her hair back and scanned her surroundings, always cautious due to her height. She faced the sun and smiled. When Ronnie told Shannon Carlisle he was leaving the gas station, she questioned his destination. Ronnie paused. "Why?" he asked. "So I can forward my last paycheck," Shannon quipped, stepping off her milk crate. "Heading somewhere warm? I'm already snowed in." "Shannon, what's a stunning girl like you doing with an old guy like me?" Ronnie teased. Ready to banter back, Shannon replied, "About 7 inches." Closing her eyes, she asked, "What color are my eyes?" "Dark brown," Ronnie answered. "I have a dimple." "On which side?" she queried, opening her eyes. "Left," he responded. "And when you smile, your right front tooth peeks out, slightly crooked," he added. "Why say goodbye?" Shannon questioned, moving from the counter. "Polly, I'm leaving." "I'm not sure," Ronnie said as Polly, hauling his 312 pounds, exited the warehouse. "Sure," Shannon grinned, taking Ronnie's hand. "Polly, I'm out." 2 hours left," Polly protested. "Feeling sick?" Shannon claimed. "Goodbye." "Ever been to Texas?" Outside Alliance Square Medical Center, Shannon whispered, "Ronnie, I love you."
Hello. Lately, I've been meeting someone truly warm-hearted. Where else could you find such a comforting person? I'm well aware that, as a married man, this isn't right. But I can't bear the thought of losing such a precious woman, and I'm struggling with how to control my feelings. I'm a father of 2. I grew up as the youngest of 3 siblings in a family considered blessed at the time. Both of my parents graduated from 4-year colleges and were prominent business figures in our community. My mother supported my father's business while raising us, ensuring we lived comfortably. We always had better school supplies and clothes compared to other kids. Due to the thriving family business, we had a housekeeper living with us since my mother couldn't manage the household work and take care of 3 children on her own. I ended up attending the most prestigious university in our area, where I met my wife through a student club and started dating. After landing my first job, we got married. She was my first love. I lived my life knowing only her until I made a significant mistake. Shamefully, I had an affair with another businessperson I met at a gathering. We had a son first, then a daughter, and I worked hard to raise them. I was doing well in my job, earning a decent income, and my children were growing up healthy, which made me greedy. We moved to a renowned school district, and my wife began homeschooling our children using her major. I was successful in my company, receiving raises and doing well at work. However, large corporations have an abundance of talent. Suddenly, I was faced with a notice suggesting voluntary resignation. I was at an age far from considering retirement as my last job. Around this time, a distant relative of my wife, who worked as a public servant, gave us a tip about a government project that would be a hit but required a certification. We were advised to study online and get certified. Life is unpredictable, so my wife and I both got our certifications. Then, I applied for voluntary retirement and received 3 years' worth of salary plus severance pay, which was enough to live on. For the first time, I received a business registration certificate. Although the business, being government-run, wasn't hugely profitable, it freed me from the daily overtime, competition, and exams, which was a significant advantage. Becoming a boss for the first time, I realized how much I didn't know, but by attending meetings with peers in the same industry, I started to exchange information and learn. Working together frequently meant we found ourselves on the phone several times a day discussing work. Since our offices were close by, face-to-face meetings to tackle work tasks became common. The groundwork of our friendship was laid when Sophia, who had recently started her own business, asked me for advice. I provided her with some guidance, and she was able to resolve her issue successfully. She expressed her gratitude by offering to buy me dinner, mentioning how she had been struggling alone, with no one to turn to for advice since her business was still in its infancy. My wife has always understood that my job couldn't be done alone. Despite holding a certification, she had never worked in the field herself, but I kept her updated on every detail, so she was understanding whenever I went out for drinks with other business owners in the evenings. One day, I suddenly had dinner plans and met up with Sophia. She shared how taxing and uncertain the business felt, even though it required minimal capital being a government project. I encouraged her, saying that persistence and sharing information would eventually bring good fortune. I'm not much of a drinker, but I enjoy good conversation. Sophia confided in me that her husband had been unemployed for a year, which was tough because they had growing kids and expenses were piling up. She had started the business out of necessity, but felt let down because her husband wasn't contributing to household chores or childcare. He was once hardworking, but had become disillusioned after losing his job. She lamented about the struggle of managing work, household chores, and taking care of the family's needs all by herself. Yet she tried to keep a calm front for her sensitive children. I empathized with Sophia, discussing the pressures of being a provider. Her husband was likely struggling with the lack of job opportunities and becoming increasingly irritable. I reassured her, understanding her husband's perspective and acknowledged her diligence at work. Sometimes a meal and a conversation are all it takes to alleviate stress, I told her. As the alcohol flowed, Sophia opened up even more. She mentioned how, despite any marital issues, sleeping in the same bed could bring reconciliation, but they had been sleeping separately. My wife, busy with tutoring and consulting with other parents, barely had time before she was off to sleep in our shared space. Sophia and I realized what we needed from each other in that moment of urgency, leading to a visit to my office to address what was lacking. Since then, Sophia and I have maintained a comfortable relationship. I've heard that workplaces can often be the starting point for affairs. Sophia has become like an office wife to me, a first in my life. We both understand the importance of protecting our respective families. Yet the affection remains unchanged. Sophia is 5 years my senior and occasionally calls me brother, which I know shouldn't happen, but I find it hard to resist her charm and wonder how to manage these feelings.